All right, so in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I made this animation inside of After Effects. I'm going to show you the video and then we're going to go into the tutorial.
Even a small drawing error can cost thousands. Engineers spend hours checking drawing, days chasing feedback, and weeks fixing what should have been caught in minutes. Meet Nexcad AI Checker, your instant drawing review assistant. Scan your drawings for missing tolerances, GD&T errors, and standard violations in seconds. Get instant suggestions, auto-fix common errors. Collaborate seamlessly, capture every decision. Each review trains your AI and builds the knowledge base that powers your competitive edge. Faster reviews, fewer errors, happier customers. This is engineering accelerated. Nexcad AI Checker. Sign up today and stop costly errors before they hit the shop floor.
All right, so I'm going to break down the whole process behind this video. First of all, we're going to start with even a small drawing error, right? Even a small drawing error. So what is happening here is trim parts and all the text are divided into individual layers. Okay, so let's go into, if you see there is a comp here, there's a comp here named opener. Let's click into it. I don't arrange my work very well, so I just blast through my work very quickly, but I understand my file, right? And coming in here, you will still see there's another comp called pre-comp 1. So that's the one we're looking for, I guess. Yes, we are in here now. And you can see even a small drawing error. So if you notice, error, drawing, small, and A is all parented to even. So it's safe to say that even is the driving object, right? So first of all, it comes out, it pauses here. If you check the graph for position and scale, you see there's a slowdown here, right? So it slows down and then it picks back up and pulls everybody backwards, right? A small drawing error, all of them come out. And when you come to each of the letters, you're going to notice that for A, there is really not much going on, just a little position keyframe, very subtle from here, pulling closer towards the A, but since it's already parented here, it's still moving in consonance with this. And then I'm using an opacity as well. I think I use opacity for all. And then the same thing goes with small. You can see small is a little bit stretched out, right, to this point and pulling backwards, still parented to even, right? And then same thing goes with drawing. Drawing, I'm making drawing come from the bottom. I didn't just want everything to, look very uniform. So I'm making drawing come from the bottom, and then same thing with error. Error is coming from the bottom, right? And this is where it starts and that's where it ends. Now, for these lines, for this line, I have these two lines in one layer, right? If you open the trim path, you are going to see end and end. So I'm animating one from this side and one from this side. And how did I do that? It's quite simple. Open into the path. It was one path duplicated into two. But if you notice these icons here, reverse path direction. So I reversed one of the path directions. That's why I'm able to use end keyframe on the trim path to animate both of them. And I'm using a little offset here as well. So yeah. And we have that animation for the two lines. So moving on to the next part, you might also notice that there is a little space in between the lines at a certain point, like a section for this A, right? What I'm doing there is I have a mask path, which if you zoom in here, you can see the mask path, and I'm making it follow this particular box, right? I'm making it follow this particular box. You can see that, right? I'm making it follow that box, okay? It might not be following it one-to-one, but because of speed, you can't really see it. Then this is, okay, so this is the lines for error, this one. and this one, right? These two, okay? Then you can see that we have a later scrolling, these numbers, this figure scrolling. How I did this was I created a list. Let me see if I can remove this track math first. I created a list of figures like this, right? And then I added a mask to it. After I created the list, I animated the position of the list, right? And then I created this box and used it as a track mat for this layer, okay? After doing that, I bring it in here and I use a mask on top of this pre-composition where I draw a little mask here and then I feather it. That's why you're seeing that everything is within this box, right? So that's how that intro was done. Okay? So let's go back to opener. Now, after this intro, we have this one right here. Okay, so this other composition, I mean, anybody can do this. Basically, I'm just bringing in the footage and zooming in. I'm zooming into the footage here and using text evo. Okay, I used text evo, but I still broke up the text into different sections. If I click on each of them, you would see what I'm saying. All of them have text evo effects on them, but I broke them into sections so that they can match his speech. Okay, and then days chasing feedback is just basically animating the footage at this point. Okay, I didn't animate the footage. I added a 3D camera on everything just to make it easy for me. So everything in this scene is 3D and we are sliding from this part to this side. So basically that's that for that section. Okay, so this first transition is the next, I would say the next part that is a bit tricky. And how I am doing that is I have a mask, a circular mask, as you can see on the whole composition. So this mask is on the composition the whole time, right? But it's very, very big. And then I have a controller that this mask is parented to, a null, basically, but I just renamed it to controller, that this mask is parented to. And so the controller is what we are animating. So when we get to this point, you can see that we scale the controller down. That's why you can see the scale keyframes here. We scale the controller down and then we add, what's it called now? We add position keyframes to link it back into position, right? We scale it down and we make it fall back into position. And then we have our text. Once again, we're using text evo. I use text evo a lot, right? I'm a text evo addict at this point. I use text evo a lot. We have this come up like this and the text moves up. Then we have this other body of text again, just appearing. Okay, another one appears, another one appears. And then you can see a switch in the view to this slant view. I'm doing that with my camera. If you come to camera here and you zoom out, you would see that we have two keyframes. I'm using a hold keyframe. So this is the first keyframe covering for all this other section of the animation. And then from this point, I switch the views, right? So I would say that's that for this intro section. I doubt there is more. Okay, so after this, and for the background, I didn't put the background inside that composition for some reason. I can't remember why, but I didn't just put it. This is the background, and what I'm doing to this background is just adding a 4-color gradient, effect. If you come to your effect and presets, just search for 4-color gradients, and you're going to see it added to the background. And then what I'm doing is I'm animating the dots. You see these 4 dots, 4 color gradients, so 4 dots. What I'm just doing is I'm animating them so you can see they are animating, right? That's why you're seeing that movement. Okay. All right. So let's go on to the next part. Let's increase the size of our comp here. And you see we have a little flash effect. We have a little flash effect going on. What that flash effect basically is an adjustment layer with deep glow. Okay, it's an adjustment layer with deep glow. And it's an adjustment layer with deep glow. Okay, an adjustment layer with deep glow. What I'm animating is the exposure, with the exposure starting at 0, and at the point of highest speed I have the exposure all the way to 0.93, right? And then back to 0 when it comes over to this composition. Another thing I'm doing is I'm matching the speed. Let me go back into the opener comp. Okay. How did I do that? There is an animation that's driving the whole speed. I think this is it. Yes, that is it. So if you notice, every of this text is parented to this controller. And also, these faces as well, they are parented to this controller. So when this controller moves, right, everything moves with it. And when you check the graph, I moved it from slow to very fast. And then when you come back to my logo animation, if you come into the composition of the logo animation, the first movement here that introduces this composition, you're going to see that it also moves very fast. Let me look for them. Can you see? It comes from fast towards slow. So that's why it's matching, and then I'm using this flash effect to create that distraction. Okay? So coming into the logo animation, how is the logo animation done? It's very, very simple. Let's look into it. First of all, we have these two guys. Let's come down. We have this logo broken up into different parts. Okay. We have these two guys. Basically, this is a position keyframe from left to right. Okay. From right to left. And then we also have this second one coming from the opposite direction, from left to right. You also see same keyframe positioning, right? And then we have this null that everything here, I guess, is parented to. And that's the null that is scaling everything down. You can see this scale effect is scaling everything down. Scaling everything down, right? And then from here, we have Nexcad. So what I did here was I broke this text into this logo. I just cropped them. If you check, all of them are image layers. And then I added a mask on them, which is a mask that imitates the letters. Then used a trim path animation on each of them. So you can see, if I switch on, okay, I don't need to switch on the layers. But if I zoom into them, you would see that they are animating on. Can you see that? So that's done with the trim part. If you go to the E, right, you notice the same thing. Now, here's the kicker, right? the N is parented to this guy, right? So when this guy moves, when this trim part, when this mask moves, the N moves with it as well. But the mask is also parented to this second icon 2, which is this one. So the N and the E is parented to this. The N and the E is parented to this. The A and the D is parented to this, right? So that it creates a seamless flow for me. I don't have to think too much when I'm done with the whole animation. Everything just flows seamlessly. And then for the word AI checker, once again, I'm a TextEvo addict. So I used TextEvo for that animation. Okay. Moving on to the next part, we have the words your instant drawing assistant animating on, right? Your instant drawing assistant animating on here. And once again, I'm using TextEvo for your instant drawing assistant. Okay. If you check here, I'm using TextEvo. Then I'm using a position keyframe. No. Am I using, okay, no. I'm not using position keyframe for that zoom out. So I'm using TextEvo, then I'm using my camera. I have all the layers on 3D. I'm using my camera to create a zoom out effect here. So if you see when the TextEvo comes on, it's going back gradually. And you can see how it's going backwards gradually. This is the camera graph editor. It's going back gradually and then it goes up, right? At this point, the camera is zooming out a bit, okay? But as well, the text here, the text here is also going up. It's also animated to go up. And the image is also animated on screen using rotation properties. Remember, the camera is zooming out as well over this section, and the image is, zooming out. Like the image is coming from, and the way this image is rotated, I don't know, let me zoom out so you can see. Can you see where the image is? Can you see where the image is? And it's moving towards this composition. Now, just another thing that you might want to keep in mind, for me to be able to achieve this level of zoom, I'll double click on my camera and you can see that I'm using a very small focal length of 19 millimeters. If you use a camera, you would understand why that is working. 19 millimeters, and it's very, very wide. That's why you can see that wide angle. See the way it's wide, right? If I use like 50 millimeters, it wouldn't be that wide. Okay, so yeah. And yes, this is the part that was a little tricky, even for me, I would have to admit. So this is the mask for this image, right? This is the mask, right? And what we are doing here is we are animating the roundness of the mask and the size of the mask, okay? And then the radius of the mask. Okay, no, we didn't animate the radius, rather. We're animating only the position, the size, and the roundness. So for this one, you can see the roundness is coming down. Okay, and why you might not necessarily notice this, because it's very, very fast. So this is where you don't have to be perfect. It's coming down. And you can also see that the size is coming down as well. And then we have the position also coming down a bit to meet this other guy here. Now, if you also notice over here, we are animating the opacity. as well. Okay, and we are also animating the scale. Remember, this is a mask. This is still independent. This is not parented to the mask. So if you're ever wondering, well, why we're animating the scale here, is because this is not parented to the mask. If I parented this to the mask, it would become very, very chaotic, and I do not want that, right? I do not want that. Okay, so this is the mask, and we are animating the position as well to also make sure that it matches, right? There's a little tweak to the position. You might notice it, you might not notice it. Okay, so then we have this checking animation. Okay, so we have the loader, right? If you notice, the loader also is, the opacity is being animated on, right? The opacity is being animated on. The opacity is being animated on, okay, as you can see here, right? Then we also use a mask. Okay, hold up. There's something I'm missing. Am I missing something? Okay, so this is the main loader. Yes, my bad. So this is the main loader, right? We have the opacity, okay? And we also have the scale coming down to match. Okay, then we have a mask over here to give us this faded effect. And we have that feather thing so that we have this part a little blurred out to also create that illusion of a rotation while we are rotating through the whole thing. And then our checking drawing, we're using opacity keyframes to create that blink. And then the same loader is zooming, that zoomed out is now zooming back out. Okay. Now this is what you want to notice. If you notice, I duplicated the loader a couple of times, and this is why I did that, right? This is our next composition that we are going into. All right, this is our next composition. Now, I'm using one loader here to show this. I'm using this other loader, which is the same thing. It's just one loader duplicated 3 times because all of them have the same animation. If not, they will not match. Can you see? All of them have the same animation. But what I'm now doing is this particular composition, this loader is the track mark of this composition. But in this case, this loader is not a stroke. I converted it to a fill. But it still maintains the same proportions. That is why this main loader that is on top here, that is the main orange loader, if I switch it off, you can see the other one underneath it, right? And you can see that this one is zooming back out, this is revealing, right? And it zooms all the way and opens up into this composition. So that's how we create, that's how we create that reveal. Okay? That's how we create that reveal. I doubt that there was any reason for this other loader. There was no reason. Yeah, so can you see? Now going into this composition once again, because now if you see we are we are going deeper into the composition. It's messy, but what you want to understand is the flow. How are we comping as we go, right? Moving into this composition now, we have another set of blocks of text and whatever going on, right? Now, you can see that we have a transparent background here. I'm going to switch everything to full so you can see what is going on here. Now, when we zoom in, right, if you come back here, you will see that when we are zooming in, to create the illusion of motion, this is what we are doing. As this loader is revealing, we have an opacity keyframe here, right? To also reveal it gradually. We have an opacity keyframe revealing it gradually. Now, come into this composition and you will see that everything here is zeroed out. Now, this everything here, right? Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. We have this little animation at the beginning. You see this little animation? This is where the composition starts animating, right? This is where the reveal is happening, and you can see that there is a movement. So if we had kept this whole part here that was inside stagnant, it would not be nice. It would look very static. So this is where we have this movement starting. And if you double click, you also see that we have a camera animation happening at this section from the left to the right, right? And then what we are doing next is all of these bad boys, these little prompts on this section, we have them pop up like this. We have them pop up like this. All right. So as you can see, each of them, how I'm making that pop-up happen is I'm just using simple position keyframes, move them upward, right? From bottom to top like this. And then what I'm using to create that little bounce is my motion tools. And then I click elastic. When you click elastic, it's going to apply this elastic controller. And that's what's going to create that bounce.
For missing,
That's what's going to create that bounce for you, right? That's what's going to create that whole bounce. And I did that for each of them. And I clicked all of them and then use sequence with a sequence of, I think, 2. Let me count. 1, 2, 3. The sequence of 3, still using my motion tools plugin. If you put in 3 here and you click sequence on layers that are, okay, you know what, let me just do it practically so you can see. So I have all of them here like this. Okay. And what I do is I select all of them from top to bottom, and then I put the word 3 here, and then I click sequence, and you can see we have a sequence of 3s. Okay. All of them are coming up. Remember, all of them are 3D layers, right? I'm doing that so that camera animation is easy. I can control everything with one camera. And let me just pull the camera up to the top, to the TPT top, right? So camera animations is happening all in one place, right? And then what I did here was I switched the views on the cameras at a certain point. Once again, using my hold keyframes, I switch the views. Can you see? Switch the views. In terms of orientation, I use my orientation. Basically, if you click rotation on a 3D, you will see X, Y, Z, but I like to use orientation so that I can control all the properties in one place. So if you start messing with the orientations, you'll notice some little changes here and there. So yeah, I did that. And it's very important to note that for this section, I kept my review thing on the screen because I wanted viewers to see what was written here, right? So I kept it here, okay? And after that, we have a subtle animation. How are we making that animation happen? All right, we have a very subtle animation going on. And how we are making that happen is that there is something I am using to control that animation. Where is it? Reveal yourself. Reveal yourself. All right, yeah. All right, position keyframes, yes. Okay, so after we switch these views, I add another keyframe immediately, an easy east keyframe, and then I animate it upwards slightly. Okay, I animate it upwards very slightly, and you can see that from here. You can't really see these graphs because they are literally laying on the ground, but it's just a little upward movement between here and here, a little upward movement of the camera. Okay, and then from this point, we switch the position back, just one frame. We switch the position and the rotation back to a flat view once again, right? From here to here, all in one, this thing, right? All in one layer. If you notice, the last rotation keyframe we had was here, right? And then that was a hold keyframe. And then from this point, we switch the rotation keyframe again back to normal. And we started a zoom in animation, right? We did a zoom in animation here using the position, the Z position, to zoom in. So yeah, let's keep that in mind. After this, moving forward, we have our mouse coming in. So this is the mouse. This is the animation of the mouse, and you can see this is where it comes on screen. These are just simple frames. These are just simple keyframes. Okay. We have a click. I'm just animating the click with scale, right? Nothing fancy over here. And when we click, you see these bad boys here? When we click, let's come back down to them. When we click, all of them move downwards. This is the keyframe for that. My bad. This is very, very tricky. So when we click, when the mouse clicks here, I animate everything downwards to give room, right? I animate everything downwards. You can see I'm pushing everything downwards. Then I have a body of text that I already had in place here. So as everything is animating downwards, I'm using my text evo and I'm animating it using lines, using the option of lines. So if you see everything is animating on line, a line reveal, using my position and opacity. So I'm setting it to reveal line by line. You can see. You can also see our button with the text auto fix on it here. If we open our button, you can see when the scale keyframe pops up at that point. Once again, I have my motion tools effect here. That's why you are getting that little bounce, right? And then we have a click on the button once again. How I like to animate my click is I like the cursor. Let me zoom in. I like the cursor to go down first, right? And then the button responds and the cursor comes back and the button comes back. I don't know. That's just the one that feels natural to me the most. That's how I animate most of my clicks when I'm not trying to create an exaggerated click effect, right? Okay, so, and then when the click happens, we see these two things pop up, and it's nothing serious. It's just a bunch of lines that I drew based on clients' references. You can also see same here. It's just a reveal. There is no keyframing. It's just a reveal. And we are done there. Okay. Now, as this is done, we have to come back to this point. Okay. Let's zoom out. And if you see, let me go back into that composition for the mouse, because now the mouse is the leading object here. How does the mouse animation end? It ends fast. Right? If you come in, you see there is a slow to a speed up. Right? And we are done with that section. Now we have to come back to our main composition for the continuation. Right? And as you can see, this composition, right? This composition has come to an end. And remember, we have the mouse coming to a point of highest speed. So how did we make that transition happen? Here's what we did. We used another mask on top of this whole composition. On top of this whole composition, this is a mask that is going to transform into a button, right? And where was this mask all along? It has always been here, but it's wide over the composition. So you can't see it. It's not masking any part of the composition just yet. So at this point, it scales down. We scale it down and we use roundness as it scales down. If you check here, we have hard edges. As it scales down, it becomes round. I added that because I just feel it has a nice touch to it. Then once again, we are using our gradients. We have our gradients here. Can you see that? We have our gradients here. All right, so as it rounds down, okay, we have our adjustment layer once again. Okay, no. My bad. No. Thank you. So we have an adjustment layer here, and why it's up here is because I added it at the end of everything. So let me just switch it off for now, and let's see this animation in real time, what it looks like. So when the composition closes, you can see the mouse is here. When it closes, we have another mouse starting up here. So it looks like it comes in and it goes out, but that's not the case, right? So where is the mouse now? Where is my mouse? Why can't I find it? Tolerance updated. My dear mouse, where are you? Okay, so this is the mouse. My bad. I like I said, my projects are not arranged, so I don't know why it's there. I don't know why it's there, but anyway. So this mouse continues here. And remember how the position keyframe of the other mouse, you can also see we have a speed to a slowdown as well. That's why you cannot see where that's, and then we have the mouse click. So if you notice, if we are to just preview this section now,
Collaborate seamlessly. Collaborate seamlessly. Collaborate seamlessly.
so it's kind of noticeable, especially for someone who is into motion design. So when we switch on this effect, it distracts a lot of things from your eyes, that it hides that moment, right? We're also putting the glow at the point of highest speed as well. Where is our mouse? Yeah, at the point of highest speed. So it creates from here, there's already a lot of distraction, a lot of things are turning white. You can barely see what is going on and you're distracted. So that's how I use the flash, that flash effect to create distractions. Here we are just doing a basic click of each of the buttons. Nothing serious to see here. Okay, so this is another scene that might seem complex, but how are we achieving this? How are we achieving this? So if you come here, you'll see that all these layers are 3D. All of them, they are all 3D. So what we are doing is, at this point where the trim parts begin, we have our camera at the tippity top. There has to be a camera somewhere. Yes, this is the camera, and it's null. Is the camera, this is the null. And you can see here that when the line starts animating, we also have the camera here pulling down towards this illustration. Okay. Pulling down towards this illustration. And the rest of the lines are just animating their trim paths, random reveals of their trim paths, right? That's why you're seeing all these trim path keyframes scattered all over the place. But if you also notice, as the lines are coming close by, you see there's a little black demarcation that's kind of fading the lines. What is creating that demarcation is a drop shadow. Sorry, it's a drop shadow effect. Layer styles. Okay, it's not a drop shadow, it's an outer glow, a black outer glow. So it's illuminating all sections on top of everything. So it creates a little bit, a sense of depth here. It creates a sense of depth. And here we now have our scale. Mind you, this AI, these are all parented to this background, as you can see here. So we have a scale keyframe here, zooming out, right? Once again, we're using our guy, the flash distraction thing. Let's switch it off so you can see it for what it is. And can you see? So it's just like,
and builds the knowledge base that
it's just
and
matching
builds the knowledge base
the speed, but we want something more distracting. So we're going to add that effect again. And you can see,
AI and builds the knowledge base.
okay. And another thing you would notice is that there's a little bit of a shake. How does that happen? I think I did that with my camera, if I am not mistaken. If I'm not mistaken, where is my camera layer again? Let's look for my camera. Did I not do that with my camera? No, that's not possible. Okay. Okay. I remember how I did that. So what I did basically was on my adjustment layer, I added a transform property and then I keyframed the position. So what I'm doing is this is the start position. The same position here is going to be the same position at the end. And then what I just do here is for this position, I move things to the right a bit. And here I move things to the left a bit, right? You can see, just watch the position of this dot. For every keyframe, can you see to the right? And then to the left, a little bit upper. You just do it randomly. And then back towards this. And then to the center fully. So that's why you're getting that little jerk, right? It creates that
Builds
little
the knowledge base.
jerky effect, okay? And from that section, I think it's pretty much easy. It's just text evo animations. And if you're wondering how I'm getting those color reveals on the text, it's actually so easy. Let's go into the composition. We have that text in and builds the knowledge base. Which builds the knowledge base. Okay, we have a light sweep animation here. If I switch it off, so we are animating the light switch from right to left. That's what's creating that little effect there. So in case you're ever confused, but yeah. And all of this is now just text animation. This is a trim path animation. I believe you know what a trim path animation is by now. And once again, flash effect to the rescue. Where did I add it this time? I think I added it inside of this composition, I guess. I guess so. Yeah, here it is. Flash effect to the rescue. Okay, Nexcad logo animation once again brought in. And that's how the animation was created. I hope this process was beneficial to you. If you'd love to see any tutorials about any other type of stuff I've not talked about here, let me know in the comment section and I'll see you in my next breakdown video.